Hey yo, welcome to episode 5 of the Meta Mind Music Show, where I interview various amazing people from all corners of the music industry, whether they are artists, musicians, producers, engineers, business owners, you name it. And in this episode, I have an amazing chat with Stacey James, who's an amazing vocalist. She's a musician. She plays in multiple bands. She also runs her own business. And we talk about silencing the mental chatter that we often confront as creatives, as well as connecting to our intuition in a deeper way while we're creating. Before we dive into that, I just wanted to mention that I have this masterclass called How to Master the 3 Secrets of the Creative Process that I just created. And I've jam-packed it full of actionable insights that I've learned on my 10+ year journey in making music, being a musician, mixing stuff, all that great stuff. So if you want to check that out and really discover how to implement and develop your own creative process that plays to your strengths as an artist, your influences, and really make it to your own, I'm sure it'll be massively valuable to you. So if you want to check that out, you can check it out in the link below. And with that said, let's dive into the episode. All right. I'm here with the amazing Stacey James, and welcome to episode, what is this now, 5 of the Meta Mind Music Show. And I'm super excited to have her on. We're going to talk about all sorts of amazing things, hang out. So welcome, Stacey. How's it going?
Thank you. I'm doing good. How are you today?
I'm
The
doing
sun.
well. Yeah, the sun is out. Finally, Canada's escaping the clutches of winter. So for anybody who doesn't live in Canada, be happy if you have sunshine all year round. You know what I mean? um, Great, Stacey. So let's start off with what are you up to these days? Like, what's keeping you busy? What are you focused on?
That's a loaded question.
It is.
Um, well, there's a lot of things that have been keeping me busy. Um, well, I guess, in the musical realm of things, I am currently working on an album with my band, Stacey James Band. I'm working on a follow-up EP to my 2 EPs I released, Pink and Turquoise. This one coming out is going to be called Yellow. Um, and so that definitely keeps me busy. And then I have so many collaborations that are in the works as well, which is exciting, and along with a new full album with the AJR project, which was a bunch of different musicians from around the world, and I did the singing and the songwriting. So there's that. Along with that, though, the annual Women Helping Women event is in the works too. So working on getting all that together. And we do that in support of local spaces that are supporting women and children leaving domestic situations. So that's like the bulk of, I guess, where my mind has been, aside from some of my work that I do every day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's you are a busy gal. Holy. Yeah, I'd love to know more about those musical projects, so we can totally expand into the Women Helping Women thing and your other work that you do as well. I'd
Sure.
love to hear like more about just what those projects are and how they started. You said you had 2 EPs out as a solo artist. Is that the same thing as the band, or is that a different project? And how did those come to be?
It's a different project, so it
Okay.
is solo. The It's interesting because whenever I hear different genres of music, and I'm a multi-genre writer, so I write everything. Like I've never released anything that's country or anything, but I've got a lot of country music that I've written. But yeah, I associate different colors with different genres, and I have found that I hadn't been releasing anything. So when I thought of Pink, to me that was like electro pop. So I was like, I'm going to release something that's electro pop. I'm going to call it Pink. Turquoise is like very much so like a soul. It captures a little bit of the old school soul, with some undertones of hip hop. I actually released myself rapping for the first time in
Sick.
over 10 years. I hadn't released anything with myself rapping, but it's something I've always done. And so that's Turquoise. And this follow up, yellow, there's orange, and then I'm kind of debating on purple what that's going to be, and whatever. But Yellow is kind of a more acoustic-y, folky, popish. And so I'm working on that. So that's where that came from. And they're kind of like quicker things for me to do, because I get different beats and stuff like that, and then I do the recording instead of composing all the instruments from scratch or working with the band and doing it all from scratch. So it's different. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, totally. That's a really cool concept of colors matching with styles and genres. I've always had an association of, well, as we know, like colors and are vibrations. But whenever I do like a project or I'm mixing or something, I always arrange like bass is the reds and then drums orange, percussion yellow, and then all of the melodies are green, and then just
Yeah.
going up in the frequency range. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and like that's real. What inspired you to explore all these different genres? Because you mentioned like synth pop and then acoustic folk music, and I know that you're a singer and you're a pianist. So, like, how did this come to be that you're exploring all these different? You're making beats, like all this other crazy stuff, which is awesome. But what inspired you to explore all these different things? Yeah, I'd love for you to share with that.
It's always been there, you know. I guess growing up, I mean, I was raised on like my mom's old school Motown records, so there's always been kind of a undertone of soul in my life. I mean, that's that's just, I don't know, you know, that's always been there. But I've always been in love with so many different genres all throughout my life, like, you know, from rock to the storytelling within country. I just absolutely love, you know, and then pop, and I love dancing. And so I was like, man, you know, I wanna make some songs that people can. I don't want to age myself, but get jiggy with it. You know, I want to have some right, some music that captures that, because you know you can't really get down with your bad self the same way to some of the soul music or even some of the rockish poppy soul stuff that I do. It's just a different vibe. So I wanted to explore that, but I've always written in so many different genres because I write like crazy, you know. And my goal back in the day and even now, it's always been to be a writer, not just for myself but for other people. And I've been very blessed to have that opportunity over this past year. There are some pieces out there that I wrote by being sung by other people now, but it's yeah, it's just always been there. And so I'm like, I need to release these parts of me, because I've always heard like pick your genre and put yourself in, you know, you can't market if you do everything. And I understand that concept, but at the same time I'm limiting who I am by not releasing these different parts of me. So I was like, to heck with it. I'm gonna come out with a rainbow. And yeah, that's where that came from.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I 100% agree with that, where typical marketing advice, like if you're going to be selling, I don't know, like spatulas at a store, then you probably should focus on spatulas. And like, you know what I mean? But in art, that's where it gets tricky with marketing and business stuff around art, because at the core, you want to stay authentic to what you want to express and what you want to share. And if something's like obstructing that as some abstract concept of you should do this, then it becomes a problem. So I'm glad that you, because there's always a way. There's always a way to make something work. If even if you're doing a million different genres, people will still appreciate that, and people will probably even appreciate that you're doing a variety for other artists and other people who are creatives as well. One thing you mentioned there is you write a ton, and it sounds like you do. It sounds like you have this band, you write for other people, you have these EPs out, all this stuff, and I'd love for you to speak on how do you write so much? Do you have a process? Do you have like a daily practice? Do you have some sort of like approach that you take, or is it just like you can't stop it? I'd love for you to speak to that.
Yeah, well, it's a combination of things, I feel. Because I'm a very empathic person and I just absorb the world around me, it gives me inspiration constantly. So I'm constantly being inspired by things every single day. And so I write about them, you know? So there's that. And I don't really, honestly, I don't really have a daily practice. And any time that I put myself in the mindset where I'm like, okay, I'm going to pick a topic and I'm going to have it every day, I'm going to make it hinders me. You know, I know that I have to stay in a place of flow, and then it's always just coming out, you know? So I take my own life, I take the world around me, I take all these different things, and it just keeps the flow going. But at the same time, I got to be honest, I have a very difficult time taking credit as my person for these things, because I believe that a lot of things just come through me, so it's like it's there, it's given, and it's my responsibility to get it out.
100%. Yeah. And one thing about that is the focus seems to be on the inspiration. Like the focus is on being open and being receptive, as opposed to the opposite of planning everything and forcing it and being like, I have to create all this stuff. Then the focus is on the coercion, right? Is on the forcing yourself to do it, getting things done. And I think that's so important. It's something that I teach as well to my students, where it's, you have to, at least if you have a process, if you have a daily practice, if you want to have a system, there has to be part of it that enables you to get into flow, that enables you to open up, right? Because you can't have a formula for art. Like there's never going to be a process or an approach that will be what you want to express, because that's always changing. And also you can never reduce something like that to a formula, right? Because it just doesn't work that way. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that, and that's the primary thing. And it probably speaks volumes that it doesn't sound like you put too much pressure on yourself to create stuff, and it just kind of, when you get out of the way, it kind of just happens. So
Well,
that's really cool.
yeah, sorry.
No, please.
I'm a little excited because you said the word flow, and that's exactly what was going through my head is flow. There's such a difference between us running through our, essence, which is where our flow sits, our energy, and then the mind, and that the mind has the ability to do so many wonderful things, of course, but it can limit us. And the second we go into our mind, that's where we put that pressure. And the second I have pressure from myself or even others around me, that's when I start getting blocked. So I know that I have to be in a space of flow. Otherwise, I'm no good for anyone, especially my creations. There's going to be probably 2 instead of 30 if I'm hanging out in my head. But then again, that planning part, if you can have that balance, so that you're grounded and flying at the same time, holy moly, the world opens up for you. Grounding is where I struggle, to be honest. I'm just like, and I'm like, come here. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's super important. I agree. That it's a balancing act. And there's a quote. I think it was the mind is a fantastic servant, but a horrible master. Right.
Amen.
And it's just because the mind is powerful. It can organize, conceptualize all these things. It can remember things and associate things, which is great. However, like what you were speaking to earlier, is that a lot of creativity, a lot of ideas and creations and inspiration comes outside of the mind. It's not something you've thought up. It's something that comes to you, and then thoughts come around it. And in that kind of lens, it's like then the mind as an editor, as a curator from what happened, that's a great role for the mind. But as the sole source of a creation or of a creator, it's iffy. It starts to overanalyze, overthink things, all those kind of things. And yeah, that's just right on the head. And you spoke earlier as well about how you feel that a lot of what you create, you can't take credit for because it came through you in flow, and like your essence, whatever name you want to put to it. And I think that aspect is so important, because again, it's something that you can't plan. It's something you can't outline. You can't pin it down, because that's the beauty of it. The fact that it's beyond conception. It's beyond something you can wrap in a package and point to. And and like I'd love for you to speak to that. Like, it seems like it's a big part of your process. It's also a big part of probably a lot of other things you're doing as well. So yeah, I'd love to hear more on that.
Yeah. No, like when it comes to taking credit for it, and see, the one thing that I guess I will mention in connection to that is, because it's almost like being the messenger, like that's kind of how it feels. So when people are like, oh, I love that, you're, I'm like, thanks. Like, I almost feel guilty, to be honest. Like, and I guess it's a good thing and it's a bad thing, because that's one of the reasons I have such a difficult time with promotion, because I'm not, I don't like being like, look at me, look at me, look at me, because I'm not that kind of person. But it's it also takes away a form of the right to judge our art. And so many people, and artists and musicians and like anybody that is a creator of some kind, we can be so hard on ourselves and we judge what's coming through us. But, sometimes I say to myself, I'm like, how dare you? Like, how dare you judge this thing that's coming through you? You need to like let that go. You need to release it. And then it puts me in an observational space instead of this critical, judgmental thing that I'm attaching to myself, because it's not me. I'm just allowing it. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, that was some wisdom right there. Holy. Yeah, just I feel that the quality judgments and the attachment to those quality judgments as you is probably the single biggest source of pain for creators. And I'm sure we all ebb and flow into falling into that. But like I've struggled with that in the past a lot, and I sometimes still do. But
Me too.
it's crazy how just a small tweak of, instead of judging, I'm just gonna observe. I'm just gonna see. I'm gonna see how I feel about it. I'm not gonna attach to it and start calling it things. And that is so, it's been so revolutionary in everything I do. And one of my coaches actually pointed out, in the music making process in general, but in anything, if you really think about it, because how far does creativity expand? But is that we can't trust our quality judgments at any point in time. And you might have experienced this where maybe you're working on something, you're like, oh, this is really happening, this is crazy. And then the next day you come and you listen and you're like, this is interesting, to say the least. But I was really feeling it before, right? Like, and that shows the ebb and flow of our minds and our moods. Is like, that is so unreliable. It's just like I even change my opinion about music I like. Like that, at one point I'll be like, I don't know if I dig this artist, I don't know if I dig this record, and then you listen to it 2-3 times and you're like, this is amazing. Or the flip side, you're like, this is actually really cool, but then after the second or third listen you're like, actually, nah, it's not that special. And that just points towards the like flippy floppityness of our minds, right? And if you rely on that all the time, that's going to be what you experience in the music making process, right? That's really, I think that's so important for especially people just getting started, is to try to invite that observer state, try to allow things to happen instead of making them happen, and see what happens.
Just the openness, like there's something to be said for that, like just sitting there and opening to it. And it's even like that with performing, for myself. I'll be honest, like when I'm performing live, it's almost like I separate from myself. And I've always said that it's like an out of body experience. The second my mind comes in, I mess up, because I'll just be playing and singing and everything's good. And then I think, and then the second I think, it's almost like going, woo, and I'll mess up. So it's like, flow.
100%. Yeah, like even like performance, but in anything, like even sports performance or speaking, or I don't know, even if you're like adventuring with other psychological things, psyche things, as soon as the mind comes in, it changes things, right? And it's almost like, if you imagine flow as like this cosmic energy running through you, and then the mind is like, it like cuts it off, right? Because it's trying to like anchor it to something. It's trying to reduce it to something it can understand, which then it isn't what it is anymore. Which we could go into that gets pretty into deep territory. But one thing I'd like to segue to is, you mentioned growing up, you were around music, you're around Motown, or what your mom and your parents were listening to. I'd love for you to speak as to how did you get into this whole making music, into all these different styles, and like where did this start, and the progression of getting into playing piano, singing, recording music. Like, how did that come to be?
Funny, like when I think about it, yeah, no, my mother, she was always had music going, especially Saturday morning. Like Saturday morning was cleaning morning and the house was a bumping, and she was getting down with her bad self and singing along. And she was a vocalist back in her day. Um, she did a lot of travel. There was a band called Expedition to Earth that was from Winnipeg from back in like the 60s, 70s there. She did stuff with them and they traveled to Vietnam during the war and they were performing out there. And so it like music is like embedded in me. But she was also a poet, and I started with poetry. So when I was about 7 or 8, even, I'm gonna say more around 8ish, I started writing poems, and I actually still have a copy of my first one. It's called Beautiful Horse. And what I'm doing is I'm like looking at this horse and I'm asking it, do you feel what we feel? Like, when your hair mane is blowing in the wind, do you feel what we feel? Do your sounds, are you expressing yourself? Like, so there was something there. And I know that I was always connected to music in a really weird way because I'd always feel emotions connected to it. Sometimes a song would be happy, but I was picking up the feelings of the person performing it just through the radio, so there was always this weird connection. I've always felt very, very deeply. So it started with my poems, and then my poems had melodies, and I was always playing music. I had my little recorder and I had my radio show where I was like the DJ and I'd be talking and playing a song by like whatever, Ace of Base, and then I'd be like, yeah, this is Stacey, it's just, it's always been there. And I had a little guitar when I was about, I want to say 9, and I broke it. But by the time I was 12, I was like, I need a keyboard, and I didn't grow up with a whole, I mean, I always had what I needed, and I'm very honest and open and transparent about this, but I was raised in a single parent home. She didn't have a whole lot. And I remember her one Christmas. I was probably 1, 2, 3. I would have been about 14ish, probably. I got my first Yamaha PSR 260, and that was it. Like I just started taking the melodies that were in my head and coming up with the music for all these words, that I'd been writing for years. And that's where that started. And then I had also gone into school band, and I was on the French horn, and then the double French horn, and the triple French horn, and then I fell in love with the trumpet, and it kept snowballing. But then I realized too that I do not like, and I'll just mention this about my creative process, I don't like creating melodies to words. I need the emotion within the melody to create the words. So it's either I'm writing some words or I'm composing to get words there, or just to have the music, because the music is what the emotion is for me, and that's where my connection is mostly. But yeah, and right around that time when I started on the keyboard, I was also introduced into the local hip hop scene. So I did my first show when I was 14 at the Pyramid Cabaret. I was snuck in through the back door and I did my thing. Yeah, and with oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank here. Headline Attracts is what it was called, and it was Roswell, who was an MC who'd been in the scene, and Big Bear. They pushed me. They were like, you know what, you've got talent, go, go, go. And I'm like, and yeah, and then it just kept going. It just never really stopped. I ended up in a band as the front lady, and I was singing and songwriting for a funkish band called Grooveport when I was 18, 19. That was my next step out of the hip hop scene, which I really loved, but I wasn't playing instruments or anything like that. And I still wasn't in this band. I was just singing and writing the songs, and we did a bunch of different things. And then I was finally getting the courage to play my keys live, which I actually didn't really start doing until I was about 23, 24 is when I finally put my band together and was like, no, it's going to be me playing my piano, and the rest is history. I've just been collecting instruments ever since and adding them to my thingamajiggy, my
The spaceship.
my spaceship. I like that. Yes.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. So sounds like you just were naturally pulled into it, right? And sounds like when you got your hands on something like the piano, it started to it's just like, you knew that you were in the right place. Um,
It was there. My cousin played piano growing up. We were 2 years apart and attached at the hip. And I'd go to her house and she had like an old school stand-up piano, very similar to the one I have, because it was my dream to have one. And she used to sit there and play. And I remember being like, I want to be able to do that one day. I want to be able to do that one day. And I haven't had any training, to be honest with you. I mean, I make up notes. My bass player has been trained in theory for over 40 years, and he's like, that's not real. That's not real. That's not supposed to work, but I like it. I'm like, then play it, So,
mhm.
and yeah, sometimes I'll sit there and I'll just play and I'll cry. I'll be honest, because it was my dream as a little kid. I looked at her playing and I was like, oh, I have to be able to do that one day. And I can't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The little kid in you is like, yes, I can do it. So
Little
that's
things celebrated.
that's actually interesting. You mentioned that you have no formal training. Me neither. Like I got into music just like typical rocker with no theory and just finding things that resonated with me without any conception of if it worked or not. And I'd love for you to speak to that. Like, how did that affect your creative process? Um, how did you follow finding things that you liked and not having a guideline, I guess, or a teacher to show you the ropes and finding the ropes yourself?
Relying on my ear, I guess. That would be the biggest thing because I'd have the sounds in my head. So when I was learning the instruments, I'd be finding the sounds on the piano. It'd be like and then hitting every key until I got my and then eventually I started memorizing patterns. I'm a big pattern person. So I remembered the patterns of different sounds. And I feel like that's probably how I did it was my ear, and that obviously it's like a muscle, right? So it keeps growing and growing. And then I was playing with bands and I was going to jams and and stuff like that. So I had to continue to tune my ear. So when I'd hear them play something, I'd be like, okay. And then I'd come in and be able to find different things until my ear was, better, I guess. Did I answer the question? Yeah, I think.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, and that's interesting because that's something I speak to anybody who might consider themselves not creative or struggling with coming up with ideas. And it's like if you really think about it, if you put anyone in front of an instrument that even if they never played it, and as long as they can make sound out of it, with enough time, they will eventually find things that they like. Right? Like it
Mm.
might take a while. It might be like, but eventually they could probably piece something together that they like without any knowledge of the instrument, any theory, how to play it, technique, nothing. And that speaks to like that in turn, it's like before anything, it's just being able to create something that you like. And I think everybody has that. And then you find a way to express it in all these different ways, right? So for you, it was poetry first, right? Like that, very interesting. So words and talking to that horse and having a dialogue and some kind of empathetic connection with that animal, which is awesome. And then into the piano, into jams, into composing your own stuff, right? And without anybody teaching you, no one telling you how to do that. And I don't know if anyone could tell you how to do exactly those things, right? So that's kind of the beauty of it. Um, I'm also curious. You mentioned we talked slightly about it before we started about your other work and your other interests that are tied to music, like the energy work, the spiritual stuff. How did that kind of grow on the same timeline as the music? Where did that come in?
Um, well, it's always been there. I think that's the thing. Um, how do I explain? You know, I feel like the music thing was part of my discovering that element of myself. As I'd mentioned, I'd feel different things from the music that may not have been expressed in the music. And then it wasn't until later in life where I realized that what I was doing was connecting with the actual energy of the person. So even as a kid, I just kind of knew things, I'd blurt things out, I'd make people feel super uncomfortable, because I just kind of knew things. And then I went through, a number of different things in my life. I was a very sick kid. I really was. I did kind of pass, at almost 2 years old. I was very sick with meningitis. And I always have flashes of that. I remember that this little being, on the bed and whatever. And, it was just kind of there. It's like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and I've always connected with the world around me in a different way, and people, and I could feel things. And it came to a point where I had no choice but to understand it. So my music was a lot of, and my poetry was me expressing all these different things that were coming through me that I just couldn't fully understand. And probably within my teen years, I want to say 13 to 19-ish, I did everything in my power to shut it down, because I'm like, adolescence and spirituality, it's a little weird. You tried to shut it down, but then I would know things. And so people would kind of, a couple of the friends that I grew up with, even including Big Bear, I remember standing at the back of the pyramid. I'm like, did you see that girl? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, I was like, that girl, she just kind of went downstairs. And he's like, oh my goodness. He's like, do you know what this place was before? I was like, no. And he told me the story, and I'm like, oh my God. And so there was all these different things that just popped up, and I realized that it was something that was okay. And it was a conversation that always started with, oh, am I crazy? Am I crazy? And I did have different spiritual mentors that popped in, and they were like, hey, we recognize this in you. We recognize this. We recognize this. Don't be afraid of yourself. And it helped me kind of expand. So it all just kind of whooshed together somehow. And it is who I am, I guess. But the work that I do is I guess, based on energy. I do spiritual advisory. So I do have a number of clients, like a lot of clients, that I work with around the world. And I kind of guide them through things, because I read energy, and I'm able to connect with different aspects of themselves that they may not be able to understand until they're able to learn how to connect with it themselves, including some past loved ones. And it just kept going, and I had to stop denying myself of it. So I've been going a little bit harder with it since, I want to say, 2018, prior to, my mom passing in 2019. And that really propelled it. I swear to goodness, she's been on the other side being like, don't stop it. And here I am. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really beautiful. Yeah, to me, art and in general, just like being a human, is like that whole journey of coming into what you already are. And it sounds like glimpses of that in the journey you explained. And almost like, if you think of the function of music at a more of a core artistic connection level versus maybe more pure entertainment, but from connecting to art or music in general, it's almost the same parallel, right? You're almost helping people be able to understand an energy, understand a mood, understand a vibe that they resonate with, that they like, and give a guideline as to how you could interpret this mood, right? And jump on the wagon of, maybe you feel this way, and if they're resonating with it, it's like, oh, I understand this. Like, this makes sense to me, and I feel this. And it's almost like that kind of work is almost the same kind of thing as if you're counseling someone through something in their life. It's like you're saying words, concepts, ideas, you're connecting with them to make sense out of a past situation, right? To make music with it and to make something that makes sense to them, so that they can ride it out, so they can continue to flow forward, if you want to put it that way. So that's beautiful.
Helping people is the core of me.
Mm-hmm.
So whichever way I can do it is the way that I've just crafted my life to do it. That's what makes me happy, is that, honestly.
I feel the same way. It's there's nothing quite like the feeling of helping somebody. It's to me it's one of the closest things to like true love, like unobstructed love. And I remember reading, I think in a book somewhere, or heard someone speak on it, that giving and receiving are actually the same thing. Like when you're fully giving to somebody, helping somebody, you're simultaneously receiving. That's why,
Totally.
right? And
Hmm.
the flip of that is when you're actually receiving without any guilt, without any association, without any preconceived notion or plan, nothing. You're just receiving.
Yeah.
You're actually giving at the same time, right? And it's that relationship is like, I think, one of the most powerful things that we have as humans. Instead of the opposite would be taking, right? It's like taking in fear of being taken from, or
Yeah.
in some sort of crazy orchestration of your mind
Hmm.
for something else, right? Other intentions. So that's really cool. I'd love for you. I have this really kind of deep question. So what does art mean to you in general?
Creation. Art is creation. Art is connection. It's the divine expressing itself through physical beings. It's endless. It's got no limits. It has no parameters. There's no box. There's no shape. There's no perfect, imperfect, anything. It's just everything. You know?
Well said. Well said. I agree. There's almost an art to everything. It seems, right? If you think about it, um, yeah, that's interesting. Maybe the creator, whatever created everything, is also an artist. I wouldn't be surprised. Um,
We're all artists. That's
exactly.
the exciting thing.
Yeah, I'm convinced that everybody is a creator and creative, and they just don't know it yet. If they don't know it yet, because in your day to day, like in any situation, anything you do, you have to be creative. Like it's like essential to exist, to do
Yep.
anything, right? And it just you can explore it in any literally any way that you want. It could be like cooking, it could be like how you tend your lawn, it could be like walking the dog, what kind of dogs you like all these things. It could be anything. So that's super inspiring, and it's like something that connects us, right? That instead of dividing us, which I'm always down for that. Um, Another question I have here is, so through your journey of like poetry, getting into music, coming into yourself, helping people, like all this awesome stuff, what have been some of your biggest struggles? And this can be specifically musically if you want, or just in general, but what have been some of the biggest obstacles you've faced in your journey?
Woohoo. Um, self-doubt. Self-doubt is a big one, where the mind comes in and is like, are you sure? You know, that would probably be one for sure. Opinions of others, and being able to step over and past that again and again and again and again and again and again, because getting as a musical artist, there's a lot of different, especially, there's a lot of different labels that are pinned on our foreheads. There's a lot of assumptions that are there, not by everyone, but by, with some people. And being able to peel it off again and again and just continue to show who you are is it can be very difficult and trying. So a lot of those different thoughts, I was told, you should probably never play a keyboard live and sing at the same time. You should probably never do that. I do it. I was told that I couldn't be a mother and be a musician at the same time. I have to pick one or the other, because to be a good mother, I have to be able to not be a musician, and I can't be a performing artist. Now, I'm doing both. In fact, it's actually inspired my children to follow their dreams. So it's like removing self-doubt that can not only come in from yourself, but can come from other sources, and being able to stay true to yourself and authentic to your own vision. I'd say that that is probably the biggest hurdles that I've ever had to go over. And I still to this day do. Like I still have, opinions here and there that'll come in, and I have to be able to, again, the observer, which is such a great place to learn how to stand, observe it and be like, okay, well, this is where what you're showing me or thinking or feeling or whatever. And I have the option to, what am I going to do with it? Well, I'm just going to put it right there because I have my own vision, you know? I'd say that those are probably some of the biggest obstacles. And I mean, a lot of people too, including myself, it took me a long time when I was young. I explained a little bit about where I came from, but then I was a single mother struggling my butt off in my early 20s. So it took me a lot of like building and perseverance and like saving my nickels and my dimes so that I could have the gear to actually create the stuff that I wanted to create. And like, there's a lot of physical things that'll stop you, but if you don't let it, it can't. You know what I mean?
100%. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like self-doubt in general, fear of judgment, those two things are probably, I would guess, what is the biggest problem for most people who want to do something with art in general, but music production, mixing, freelancing, like anything performing, is those things. And me personally, when I was in probably like grade 8 to almost all through high school till like grade 12, like I was so paralyzed by the perception of others and what others would think of me, and being overly like, don't want to step on anybody's toes, don't want to hurt anybody. And the core of that is I want to respect other people. I do not want to hurt or overstep, but that can also be very destructive to yourself if that gets too much, right? If that becomes a hindrance to you being yourself. So I resonate with that a ton. And one thing I think you hit on that I think is so powerful is the observer, right? Is the being able to detach from your perception of something or your reaction to something, right? And a lot of this stuff can be unconscious, but definitely. For example, like those things you said where you can't play and sing at the same time. Like, first of all, that's a very strong judgment coming from somebody else. It's a very strong assumption. And like, even if you just take one step back, because if someone says that directly to you, it can hurt, it can be shocking. Ooh. But if you become the observer, become the ninja, and you just look at the thing itself, it's like you can poke a hole through that in 2 seconds, because there's countless examples of people who have done that. Like ridiculous, right? So then it becomes just words. It has no, like, it could have meaning, but it has no meaning if you decide to not attach to it, right? Not react to it. And that's like a life skill in general that I have learned is invaluable, is to be able to not react to things and be the observer, because it saves you the pain, it saves you the heartache of reacting to things and then materializing into a self, your ego, and being like, or any of those two things. And the same goes for the other thing. Oh, to be a good mother, you should do this. And the word should has a sense of duty, right? Is like, it's like a militant thing. It's like, you should do this. And that again, it's a very, very condensed judgment on a way of being, right? Because if you, again, zoom out, look at the statement, and how many examples and variations are there on being a great parent in any different field of all sorts that isn't the traditional path, that isn't the preconceived path? There's endless. There's no end to it. And it's the same thing as art. It's like, pretty sure being a parent is an art. So
yeah.
Right? So it's like, if you think of it that way, of anything, right? Whatever you're trying to do in your life, if you're trying to run a business, freelance, build your own career, perform, it's an art. And it's like, you take any kind of advice, like, depending on what relationships you have with those people, of course, but that advice is just suggestions at best, because at the end of the day, there can't be a formula for an art.
Well,
Right?
and sadly, it's so easy for people to sink into those ideas, opinions, and judgments, and just be like, you know what, maybe they're right. And I can't even tell you how many times that went through my head, even about the performing. I was like, whoa, maybe I'm not good enough, or, questioning. I mean, even to this day, somebody will come and play the piano by me. I'm like, ooh, like, I'm not a musician. Like, it'll go through my head, and then it's like, are you joking? Yes, you are. Like, yes, it's okay. You can be, but it's so easy to sink into those things and just stop. And that is probably the most important thing for anybody connected to anything they're doing, is like, if you love it and you feel like you can and you have the will, just do it. Let them have their opinion. Here you go. You like it, that? Take it. It's all yours, because I don't want it.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's some sage advice right there. And I'd like to zoom back a little bit. And you mentioned that, like, in your 20s, single mom, doing all this stuff, craziness, and you said that you had to persevere. You had to keep moving forward. All these trials and tribulations, and you had to find ways to move through it. And how did you have anything that helped you find that confidence or find that inner voice of, like, you know what, yes, you can do this, yes, you are a musician, like that self motivation, right? Something that's encouraging, instead of, like you said, it's so easy to sink into, like, oh, I'm no good, everyone's better than me, oh, what am I doing, I'm not even good at this, and let that spiral, right? And then you end up stagnating. So I was curious if you had anything that stuck out to you as helping you with that.
I'd say there's a number of things, some kind of inner nudge for sure that was like, just keep going. Even the fact that I had become a parent, and I wanted to show that if you're passionate about something and you love something and you have faith in yourself, that you can do it, even if they weren't old enough to understand at the time, you know, even in the future, to look back and be like, wow, you know what? Like, I saw her struggle. I know what we went through. I saw this, I saw this, I saw that, but she kept going and going and going and going. That is something that I wanted my boys to understand. My oldest one, especially, because he's the one that was with me at that time. But my mother too, like, honest to goodness, when she became a parent, she stopped, and I didn't want to stop, because I know that she was so passionate about what she did, but she stopped. And I don't know if it was the opinion of other people, to be a good mom, I got to stop doing this and this and this and this. I didn't want to be that, but she also encouraged me. She'd be like, you're good. Don't, you got this. Keep going, keep going. So I had a very supportive mother, and that helped, because she was the one hanging out with my baby at night so I could go and do a show. Otherwise, aside from weekends when there was dad time, but, yeah. So I'd say a combination of those three or four things.
Yeah, that's support and having people around you that are encouraging, right? That are lifting you up. I think there's a saying where it's like you end up being the sum of the 5 people you hang out with closest, or something like that. I don't know how valid that is, but I know for a fact that, for, like, in my own journey, like, the friends that I keep and the people I hang out with will affect the focus I have and the state, and, like, how you speak to yourself, and whether you're like, let's do this, or like, I don't want to do anything, that kind of
Yep.
thing. So that's really cool to keep in mind.
The universe, God, whichever you prefer, sends people in, no question, because there's so many different markers in my life where someone has come in and been like, go, 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 like, randomly, and it still happens. That one project that I'd mentioned there, the AJR project, where I had the opportunity to work with musicians from around the world, and, like, a symphony and a choir and everything, was just that. It was somebody that swooped in and said, go. Nope, you're good. You're gonna do this. We're gonna work on this. We're gonna blah, 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 blah. His name is Adar, and I absolutely love him. And it was just that, just when I was kind of, yep, always something comes in. Just got to be aware.
100%. Again, the observer comes up again. You have to be observant enough to see it. And I've had that both ways though, like encouraging where a new relationship or a friend or just a random like occurrence happens what that really encourages you to go forward, and it's just like a sign almost. But I've also had people I feel that have come into my life to help me grow in the other way, where it's like, some major resistance to have to either go around or go through to develop something in yourself, to then on
Mhm.
the other side you're like, I'm actually glad that happened, as crazy as it was. I'm glad that happened because I learned all these things. So that's
Yeah.
beauty. Yeah, it's like the synchronicity of the lessons that we we kind of go through. um so on the flip side of struggles, so what would be some of your biggest breakthroughs? And we've touched on some of them, but just in general with either like performance or music, any like live shows, just what you're doing in general. Because it sounds like what you're doing involves running some sort of business. If you have clients and you're connecting with people and all this stuff, so whatever way you want to take it. But what have been some of the bigger breakthroughs that you've had?
Ugh, I'm gonna get emotional. Um, I think the biggest breakthrough would be being myself, not resisting me and who I am and what I do and what I don't do and how I feel and what I perceive and what I have to drop off on this world before I'm gone. You know, that would be my biggest breakthrough. Like, is just doing and not fighting myself, whether it be with the music, whether it be with business, whether it be with the women's event, whether it be with anything, absolutely anything. Just being authentic and not having fear of and it creeps in every now and then. Sure, I wonder. It's like I've been out there doing this and doing that, and even just within the city, it's like I'm a singer songwriter, and then introducing that whole other element of who I am. However, it's been riddled through a lot of things, and most people kind of caught on anyway. But back in like 2018, 19, and being more vocal about it, I was scared, but I stepping over fear and stepping over fear and then stepping over fear again and again and again, and choosing love over fear, I feel is that is my biggest breakthroughs, or the biggest one, I guess.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's I'm still working on that. I feel like I've made a lot of progress, but I still have a lot of progress I feel I can make as well. But in that, I think there's definitely layers to it of right
Mhm.
of self acceptance.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's really interesting, and if it almost seems like that awareness where it's almost an acceptance, right? It's like you stop questioning what happens as much. Like at first, when you're like maybe growing up and becoming an adult and all this stuff, you're still discovering this stuff. But at a certain point, it's like the confidence starts to set in. The like, I don't know how to say it. The being sure of yourself. You know what I mean? Being strong footed in things that you believe in and things that you want to achieve. And I feel that anybody doing something that they're passionate about, like especially music, right? Music or building a career or business, or like if you're doing something in the whole creator space economy thing, um, having that authenticity and confidence is like probably one of the more important things to avoid it becoming a drag, right? To avoid it becoming just a shell of what you wanted it to be in the first place. You're like, how did I end up here? Because you probably went off the map and you followed advice, you followed something else that wasn't why you started it in the first place. And yeah, I don't know if there was anything in your journey that helped you kind of be more confident in yourself, or to make a decision. Was it a decision that came up, or a life event, or was it just like a slow progression of, as you, I guess, overcame obstacles and more fears, that you became more and more confident in doing that in general?
um Again, I feel like I have a little bit of a combo pack there. I feel like it was. overcoming things again and again and again. I certainly didn't have everything in my life, um, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, or anything handed to me on a silver platter. It's never, ever been that way, So every time I prove to myself that I can, I got a little stronger. But with that, and I guess this ties into a lot of my belief system too, is when it comes to vibration as a person and the different things the frequencies that you have as a being, I very much so believe that like attracts like. So what began to happen is I started attracting different things into my existence that connected with my own vibration that helped me continue to lift, until I was surrounded by friends and everything that were able to also provide me with that same thing that I would give them, but I was always also attempting to give myself, So it was that, and then you all just kind of move together. Gotta love my sound effects. But yeah, so I feel like those are probably all the things that and yeah, and a little bit of self-confidence, because it's like, what, if I could do that, if I could do that, if I could do that, if I could get through that, I could get through that, I can get through this, I can release this, I can put this podcast out, if I can give birth, I can do anything. Like that. Honestly, like, hello. That's a biggie.
Yeah, thankfully that's an obstacle I probably won't have to go.
And if you do,
oh my goodness, more power to me. Jeez. Oh my goodness. So something you mentioned there that I'm super passionate about and I'd like to talk about more is the vibratory state, like the vibration, the frequencies we go through. That's really interesting. I'd love for you to speak more on that. I'll give you my take on it. So to preface this, I feel like most people have an intuition about that without necessarily knowing it, because things like, oh man, I don't like that guy's vibe, right? Or like, this place has a nice vibe, it has a really cool like energy to it, right? Whatever, people say that without even realizing what they're saying, and that kind of points towards states, vibratory states, and not everybody goes as far as to like identify what it could be and like put language to it and understand it. But I'd love for you to speak to what that is. Like, what is a vibratory state, and how can we like change it? How does it affect us?
Okay. Whew. Loaded.
It's a big question. Yes.
It is. I'm just going to break it down for a second in my head. So we are all born with intuition. All of us. We all have it. It's something that is embedded in our being, and it's something that we are not taught to continue expanding or fully understand as we're growing up. And I've always said that I believe that a lot of this stuff should be within our school systems. Yes, I understand that book knowledge and different things that they're learning there can be very beneficial in different ways, some of it not at all. But one thing that would be incredibly beneficial for the whole human race is to understand the power that we have as human beings. And one of them is intuition. So we all have it there. It just, there's like, I always talk, and this is something I actually teach. We have the whisper and then we have the loud voice, and eventually the whisper can become a lot louder. That's our spirit energy. That's our intuition. That's the one that's like, yeah, but that, but this one's like, blah, 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 blah. That's the mind. The mind is a really loud bang, but once you learn what is speaking and you're able to silence it just a little bit, you actually hear what's actually going on. And that can be intuition. When it comes to vibration, though, as people, we all have a vibration. That vibration is very much so connected to the thoughts that we're thinking, because everything is energy. So we have these different thoughts that we're thinking that has a vibration that is emitted as a result, but there's also a feeling that produced the thought produced a feeling. That feeling has a vibrational state. So how you're like, when you're sad, you're kind of like, When you're mad, there's like this aggression. When you're happy, you feel lifted. Those are vibrations. So if you think about it that way, our feelings and our thoughts are very directly connected to our vibration as a person. And once you learn how to somewhat manage what's going on inside of you, and being in that observational state helps that, then you can keep yourself in a higher vibrational state. And as a result, you start attracting things that are higher vibrational as well, because everything is energy and the universe has no choice but to deliver it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's very well said. And I agree, because even like if you break it down deeper, like everything is vibration, as we all know. Like that's like if we have to render it to matter, like some people need that for some sort of certainty. But even brainwave states, like we think in different states. When we're dreaming, our brain is in a different vibratory state, right? Like you said. And like the emotional state is like you said, when you're sad, when you're depressed, you're lethargic, you're stagnant, it's not flowing, the circulation isn't going. There's actual physiological effects
Absolutely.
of these things, right? But when you're like, if you did a workout, you went for a walk, you're feeling good, you connected, you speaking yourself, everything's flowing, and you're in a different state. And as artists and musicians and creators, we are communicating those states, and we have a desire to express those things, and being able to tune the frequency, because it's almost one thing I like to think of is like radio antenna, right? Like the band Radiohead is like such a clever name, because it's like what you said, right? It's like we aren't necessarily the radio station. Like we're not the source of everything. There's all sorts of things happening all in the world, in the natural world, you name it, beyond our conception. But what we do have is a tuning fork, right? Is like a radio antenna. And that would be, like you said, being the observer and choosing to interpret things, choosing to ignore certain pieces of information, whether it's advice, whether it's a certain channel, hanging out with certain people, a career path. It could be anything. And tuning it to like, what are the things that light you up? Like, what are the things that you're passionate about? What is the whisper telling you that you want to do, right? And listening to that and tuning to that instead of the noise, distractions. And that's like the superpower I feel humans have, is being able to change that radio station, because as you said, and like attracts like, and that's just a natural phenomenon. Like magnetism, electromagnetism is like, and even in most people's experience, it's most likely that you've been to a party or gathering and you're hanging out, and then there's one or a group of people that you start talking about stuff, and you guys are connecting. You're like, oh yeah, music, oh yeah, frequency, oh yeah, this show, oh yeah, whatever it is, right? And you're resonating, and then the party starts to like realize that there's something going on there, and something of that nature. I feel a lot of people have experienced that, which is what you're speaking to, right? Is like that power of tuning to things and being able to conduct your own orchestra, so to speak.
Yeah. See, we're all creators.
Right? Even just being a human being is being a creator. Right? That's unreal. Yeah, I think that that's just like, that's getting to the source of everything, right? Because there's no way to avoid, not that you would want to avoid, but there's no like a reality we're going to experience that isn't like a coalition of thoughts and emotions and experience, right? That's just the world we're in. And being able to navigate those things is like paramount to being able to achieve a goal, to build a business, to just live a more fulfilling life, to be more connected to yourself and like in your relationships with other people and your art, whatever it may be. And yeah, that's like getting right to the brass tacks, right? Is right to the source. Is like, if you can get that chariot together. So there's a book I read called The Mastermind, and there's this really cool analogy I want to share with you, where it's basically, they talk about the awakened ego, which would be the observer. That would be his language for the same thing. But your observer state consciousness is your true self, right? There's nothing beyond that. Like your observer experiences thoughts. You think thoughts. Well, what's the one thinking the thoughts? who's the one feeling the emotions is the
And who's
observer.
doing it?
Right. It's
Yeah.
the state that's experiencing it, not the experience itself. And one of the cool analogy was like a chariot with horses, right? Like you have the chariot would be the observer, and then the horses would be thoughts, would be desire, would be your will, would be emotion, could be even your perception. All of these different modalities that we interact with, all of these different things we have, and you want to be able to make them work together to carry the chariot forward. Because if, for example, one horse, let's say the emotion horse, wants to go over there and like not follow the other horses, and it's like a wild animal, so to speak, then it's going to throw you off, right? It's going to steer you off, and then you're going to shipwreck or you're going to crash your thing. And that analogy is so powerful because that's like the art of being human, I find, is finding the balance and making sure to feed those horses and take care of them and not like attack them, so that we're all working together. And it kind of ties with your first poem you ever wrote.
Beautiful horse.
Beautiful horses.
Be good to your horses. Yeah.
Yeah, that's be good to your horses is the conclusion.
I like that though. No, it's true. Yeah.
Cool. Well, what I like to do towards the end of these conversations, unless there's something else, I should ask that first. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about or share with what you're doing before? What I like to do is go into these hilarious rapid fire questions to close out these conversations.
Yeah, no. No, I mean, I probably overshared, so I'm tickety boo over here. Yeah, we're good.
Awesome. Sweet. So let's go into some rapid fire questions, which are
Okay.
fun. So what would you say is the song or artist you've shared the most with other people?
The song or artist that I have shared the most with other people?
So like an artist that you've shared with, like, hey, check this artist out. Hey, check this out.
Oh man. Like independent or not?
Whatever.
You know, oh, that's hard. You know, I don't know. There's so many,
It's hard to
and I
choose
love
one of
so
them.
many. Um, I'll settle on Raphael Sadiq.
Raphael Sadiq. Cool.
I love him.
I'll have to check him out. I've never even heard of him.
Oh,
I'm so excited
it's
now.
okay. No, he's amazing. He's amazing, and he's so versatile and creative, and yeah, love him.
Sick. All right.
I'm just serious. Love him.
You love him a lot. uh, so, what are 1 to 3 books, any number of 1 to 3, that have greatly influenced your life?
The Secret, first of all, that completely changed my life. Oh, can I give you a little bit of a story to it?
Please
It's
do.
I'll be
Please.
super fast. So because I had brushed on that time period when I was like, really struggling in my early 20s, I went to my mom's house one day because she had cable, and there was an Oprah show. And I was watching Oprah at her house, and she was talking with the author of The Secret. And I was like, I need this book. I need this book. I'm going to have that book. I need to have that book. 2 days later, I'm walking through Walmart, and they used to have these like stands of books. And sure enough, there's one copy sitting right there on top. And I look at it, and I actually have it right here. Oh my gosh, it's right here. It was sitting on top, and I grabbed it, and it had like a sticker on the back. It was like, I don't know, $20 or something. And I was like, oh, I can't afford this. I can't afford this. I'm like, I don't know. I was like, okay, I need to. And then there was a little 25% off sign. I'm like, okay, that's a little better. So I grabbed it. Anyways, this book changed my life. Like, it's highlighted. I got highlighted sections, everything. It's unbelievable. It literally changed my life. So that would be one. Another one would probably be The God Code by Greg Braden.
Oh, yeah.
Unbelievable. The way that he bridges science and spirituality together is just so powerful. And there's like the Celestian Prophecy.
Cool. Cool. I've read the first and the third, but I have not checked out the God Code. Those sound really
Yeah,
cool. That
that's a
sounds
goodie.
right up my alley. Um, how has failure or apparent failure led to success? Do you have a favorite failure in quotations?
A favorite failure. Ugh. I don't know what you mean. I've never failed. I'm just kidding.
Zoom.
I'm totally kidding. Not my middle name. Favorite failure, favorite failure. I was pushed into actually going completely solo self with my self-employment after I was told um, that I wasn't cutting the mustard for a business that I had a contract with. I was still self-employed, but I had a contract with this company, and he was just mean sometimes. And he was like, "Yeah, this isn't gonna work," and I was like, "Okay, thank you." After working for a number of years, and it pushed me into my truth. So that would be my favorite failure. I completely failed according to him, and it opened up a million doors for me to actually really be myself instead of feeling like I was going through a soul death every time I worked for him. So that would be one of my favorite failures. I'm like, does that count?
It totally does.
Um,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, like it seems whenever a door closes, or something like a door closing must happen for another one to open. So that's so true. Best sub $100 purchase you've recently made.
Best $100
Less than a
sub.
hundred. Yeah, like less than $100. I love how you're looking around the room.
Oh, because there's like a ton of them around here. I'm like, which one? Um, oh my goodness, I don't know. There's so many that I like. I just love everything. I don't know. Under $100. I love this lip gloss. Like
Boom.
I, yeah, but that's lame. I need a good one. You know what? I'll share this. My blue spinal stone.
Ooh, that's pretty.
Yeah, it's really, really nice. And you can't really get them. It was through a thing that was going through. But anyways, it's just so cleansing and it really helps with channeling capabilities. So that that would be one, I guess.
Very
And the
nice.
lip gloss. They're both
Yes.
under 100 together. So there we
Oh
go.
wow, two for one.
Double win.
What's one of the most worthwhile investments you've made? And this can be like money, time, energy in general.
My boys. My boys. Yeah. They would like if that counts, then it would be my children.
For sure, it counts. My girlfriend has also two boys,
Oh,
and
okay, so you know what
yeah,
it's all about. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And yeah, like it's they're not my children, but there's this really cool, rewarding thing as they grow and as they start to become like it's like a living mirror. Right? It's really crazy. So yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, what's some bad advice you hear in your area of expertise? So in music or in like being a musician, um, what's some bad advice you hear?
Oh, my first instinct is to say that I don't have the right to say what is bad advice. Um, but that people need to limit their creativity, or put themselves in one spot. Or, it's like, oh, if you started with pop music, stay pop music. Don't you ever release anything that's raw, you know, or, you know, or sometimes marketing advice. Like I've been told not to be myself on social media so many times, and I'm like, yeah, that's gonna happen. You know, I'm kind of weird, and I don't. Why should I put that away to appeal to like a fraction of people? Like, no, I let your fly the weird flag, right? So, yeah, limitations, any kind of limiting advice, I think is not positive unless you're doing something that can hurt yourself or hurt other people, then limit that down to nothing. But other than that, anything that's limiting.
Totally. Yeah. One thing that comes to mind with that is if you change your authentic self and you're sharing what you think other people might like, then if people start liking that, that equals you being in a cage because now you have to continue to appeal to people who like the fake version of what you're putting out,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Which
a
is
good
like
way of putting it. Yep.
extra labor. Like, jeez, that's hard. Um,
Yeah.
so what's an unusual habit or absurd thing you love?
An unusual habit. Ha, there's a few of those. Okay, honestly, I self-soothe by going like this. I take like, and I'll test everything above my lip. Like I'll take my finger, like I'll sit there with my pen and be like this because I like the way sensations feel and it's soothing. So that's it, just that fits the script, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's really soft. Try it.
I have a mustache.
Like, no. um, yeah, that would be the one.
Awesome. Um, when you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, what do you usually do?
Well, if it's nice enough and I can actually do it, then I go and I park my butt on the grass. Always. It is so cleansing for me. It aligns me. Um, I'll play piano. I'll deep breathe. Um, when somebody's super overwhelmed, a lot of people say meditate. It's pretty hard to meditate in those times, to be quite honest with you. So you got to kind of bring yourself down first before you can go to that nice blank space. Um, but yeah, no, I would say that I seek to nature. I'll go stick my hands in my plants, like if it's winter or whatever, I'll water them and I'll take away some of the dead leaves and like exchange energy with them. Um, that
Mm-hmm. Totally. I do the same. Yeah.
my puppy. Yeah.
Yes. Those friendly companions and nature. Nature is a big one. Um, what do you do now that you wish you knew when you started? And a lot of people, I've asked this question, and they're like, well, I appreciate the journey, so I wouldn't have changed anything. But excluding that, because, I mean, we all know it's part of the journey, but just in
Yeah.
hindsight, like even to you, like 10 years ago, what would be something you would tell yourself?
What would I tell myself 10 years ago that would have been beneficial?
Oh yeah, that like you would want to tell yourself, right?
Love yourself. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, yeah, I think that that's been a journey in itself, of course. But if I could take, you know, and I don't mean like in any other way other than like the individuality as a person, it's like we deserve to love ourselves and love our individuality. So if I could go to, 14-year-old Stacey who, judged herself, that was chubby and was like, I'm too fat and people don't want to hear me sing. And, I would just be like, love yourself. Like, sure, you have this feeling about your vessel, but here and here, girl, stop it. So I think that that's probably what yeah, because that would have maybe changed the path a little bit, made it less painful,
Mm-hmm.
or hard.
100%. That's awesome. So this one's probably going to be tricky. But what are your top three desert island albums?
If I was going to take 3 albums to a desert island,
Mm-hmm.
oh geez, this isn't even cool.
This
I'm done
one
with
is
them.
a horrible
I'm just
question.
kidding. um, oh man. Prince greatest hits, 100%. Like, because if I can't like, there's not one single album. Like, it would have to be a greatest hits album so I can get a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, this hurts. Probably The Diary by Alicia Keys,
Cool.
because like I could probably sing that. Oh no, but maybe that's a toss up between that and the Bodyguard soundtrack by like Whitney Houston. Because I need something to sing to. I need something to groove to. I keep having the Red Hot Chili Peppers popping up in my head. So like, but I don't know where. It would have to be the soundtrack. Which album was Under the Bridge on? I don't know. This is hard. You're hurting me, man. I don't know. This is my last one. Like, can you feel my stress right now?
I know.
Like, this isn't fair. I'm gonna, like, honestly, I just put them because I'm having such a hard time. I'd lay them all out and just pick one and run. And I don't know what it is, so we're gonna leave that as a void.
Nice. It's a mystery. It would be the heat of the moment, last grab before the time warp on the desert island.
I don't know. That's tough.
All right, so here's the last question, and I feel like it might be this close to the same as what you would tell yourself like 10 years ago. But if you could send a text message to everybody on Earth in their language and they had a phone and they could get it, what would it be?
Aw. Oh, that's hard. Actually, there's so many things that are going through my mind. Even just the thought. Look, I'm getting a little teary. I'm such a sucky poo. You're loved and you have a purpose, and don't you ever forget that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That's an amazing note to end on. Before we sign off, is there anything anything you're working on that people can come check out, and like, where can people go find out and learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a few places. I mean, just a quick Google, Stacey James, you'll find me. Stacey with an E. All my tags online are Stacey James Writer, Stacey J Writer. So that links people to my spaces. StaceyJames.ca is almost done being revamped. So I'm just in the process of that. So there's another place. But yeah, I keep social media pretty plugged in, with my shows as far as like Instagram and Facebook, so that's the Stacey James Writer tag, and my website, obviously, once it's done its revamp. So those are a few places to find me. But as far as music goes, there's a lot of music coming. My band has a single coming out June 27th, full album August 13th. Stacey James Band is the name. Really creative, right? Just stuck a band at the end. And then we have, I have the Yellow album and some singles that are going to be dropping out. So as long as anyone wants to find me, they can, like I'm here, there, and everywhere. And my Manitoba music profile, I keep that very updated as well.
Awesome. Great. We'll put all the links to what you mentioned in the show notes for this. So definitely check those out. And yeah, with that said, thanks so much. This has been an insanely enlightening conversation. I'm so glad we did this. Thank you so much for taking the time.
For sure. Thanks for having me and for what you're doing.